Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Super Nintendo game, and that happens to be Super Mad Champ. And it was developed by Jivro and published by Sakuda Original. And in case you're wondering, Jivro was the same company that made games like Wonder Project J2, Evo, Search for Eden, and they even did the original version of River City Girls Zero, which, of course, at the time, it was not called that. That's what the new name is now ever since it was republished by WayForward. And it was released in 1995, and it was only in Japan. And I'm kind of surprised this game was only in Japan, given that this game is very similar to a game that's very well known in the West called Road Rash. Yeah, speaking of Road Rash, I'm probably going to be making a lot of comparisons to that game for this video because it really is very similar in many ways. So if you really think about it, it's kind of like a Japanese Super Famicom take of the concept of Road Rash. But before we move on, I do want to mention one quick thing, that apparently this game was originally intended to be related to the series Kunio-kun, or, you know, River City Ramson and all that, but was changed to be more original, which is kind of interesting to think about, and even though I have played the original version of that River City Girls Zero game, it actually also does have a driving section where you also do get to kick people as they go by, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just took that concept of that game and then just made a full-fledged game out of it. Alright, so let's get moving on, and I'm gonna say it right now, but there is no story in this game whatsoever. It's just doing as many races as you can over and over and get as much money as possible. That's literally the entire game. And there are 5 playable characters that you can play as, so we have some generic motorcyclist, and then we got some girl with blonde hair, then we got some guy that looks like he's supposed to be like the original Kunio-kun. It wouldn't surprise me if that's who he was supposed to be intended to be originally. And then we got some punk rocker guy, and then we have like some dude with a beard who looks pretty manly. And after picking one of these characters, you can choose which cup you want to go after. And of course, the more expensive the cup is, the more like harder it's going to be. And after you pay the entrance fee, you can then tune up your bike, or you can also buy a new one and then just simply start the race. Now, since this game has yet to receive a fan translation as I'm doing this, the tune-up section is all in Japanese, and same with the store, but I feel like it is pretty easy enough to manage through and what things are what. Like, at least you actually know, like, what, like, handling and all that is. And once the race starts, well, it shouldn't take much to explain this, but yeah, you just race around the track 3 times, and then you try to get first place as much as possible to get the most prize money. And just like Road Rash, you can actually attack people beside you and knock them off their bike. And yes, whenever you do fall off your bike in this game, you actually have to get your character to run after your bike and then pick it up and then, you know, try to like get back on track again. So yeah, that's another thing that's also very similar to Road Rash. And that's pretty much it, though I should also mention that this game also has a password system to continue where you left off. So now, let's get talking about the game's controls, and I think the controls in this game are pretty decent, but there is a couple flaws here and there. So the button layout is very simple and easy to understand. You know, one button accelerates, the other one brakes, and of course the 2 shoulder buttons allow you to attack on either side. But how do they feel? I think they are responsive enough. Like, when the race really gets going, it actually does get pretty exciting and fun, but my main complaint is that this is one of those games where it's really easy to fall off your bike, for that if you keep turning like way too much, you'll just slip off and fall, which is really annoying to deal with. So whenever you're turning in this game, it kind of feels almost like a balancing act, where you don't want to turn too much on one side, but you also got to make sure, you know, you don't run into any like objects or anything. So what works for me is that whenever you have to make a huge big turn, and once you see your motorcycle sliding sideways a bit, that's when you kind of want to like tap like the opposite direction of where you're turning a little bit, just so you don't have to make that like huge big turn and chances of you falling off. And one other thing I have to mention about the driving in this game is that I feel like that the game like doesn't run as smooth as I would have liked to. Now the frame rate I don't think is bad, but I do feel that like the game just feels like a little bit slowed down compared to like, you know, Road Rash, like I've been saying like a lot of times. Like, even if we're comparing to Road Rash 2, like I feel like that game just feels a lot more smoother with its handling. But without comparing it to anything else though, I do think that the game does handle pretty okay for what it is, but you know, if you go from Road Rash to this though, you will definitely notice that the game doesn't like run as smooth as it. And that's all I have to say about the driving parts. Of course, whenever you're on foot, you can actually get into fist fights with other players, but of course, this will also cost you time, so I only say it's worth doing if you're just trying to just fuck around with it, because, you know, it's just kind of fun just to be able to beat the shit out of, like, another racer. In fact, the whole idea of this kind of reminds me of another game that I covered in the past called Zoku, The Legend of Bashin, which has a really awesome cover art and a really awesome concept, but unfortunately, I thought the game really sucked. And I can tell you this right now, that this game is way better than that game. So yeah, overall, I can say that the controls are decent, but it does have a few things that could have been improved upon. So now, let's get talking about the other things, like the graphics. And the graphics in this game, I think, are quite nice. The game is very bright and colorful, I really like the art style a lot, and it looks very similar to the other Kunio-kun games on the Super Nintendo. And I also like some of the character designs as well. For that, I do think they have some charm to them. But the one thing that I did find funny is that I do find that the female character's outfit in this game, it looks almost exactly like Ned Flanders' skiing outfit from that one episode from The Simpsons, which always makes me laugh.
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all.
And the stages do have some nice backgrounds to them, though there is some that do look very similar to others, but for the most part, there is some pretty nice variety. So overall, I can say that the graphics are nice and they are bright and colorful and appealing to look at, but I wouldn't say they are like, you know, a technical, like cutting edge type of thing for like 1995 standards for the system, but it's still pretty nice looking. And as for the game's music, well, the music in this game I do think is good. I do think it is enjoyable, very upbeat, and there are some songs that do sound like kind of like hard rockin', which is really nice. And it was composed by Hikoshi Hashimoto, who also did stuff like Run Saber and Alien Storm. So that's pretty cool, but yeah, overall, I think the OST in this one, I do think it's pretty good, I do like it. I wouldn't say it's like my top favorite like soundtrack for like the system, but I do like it enough to say that it is a pretty solid OST. Maybe it just needed like a couple extra songs, but otherwise though, I really don't have any major complaints about it. So now, whenever you want to go out and buy yourself a copy of this game, I'm gonna say it right now that yeah, as always, it's another really expensive game. And the cheapest I've seen it for was $51, and that cheap copy had like a lot of yellow on it, so it looked like someone pissed on it. And it seems like during the past few years that a lot of games usually fall into this category that I've been covering, so yeah, I don't know, I'll just make it quick and short and just say that yeah, it's not worth that price. And especially for a pissed colored variant. So now, as my overall thoughts on Super Mad Champ, is that I think this game is fun and enjoyable on a mindless level, but it's not a type of game that I can like see myself like spending hours playing. So even though it does have a password system, I'm more than likely never going to use it, because not only is it a pain in the ass, but secondly, most times I'm going to play this game, I'm just going to start from like a new game and just like screw around like that. So the game does have its flaws, like I mentioned before. I do think like the whole like steering thing can be a little bit annoying to deal with, and also like the game doesn't run as smooth as like other games that I've played, but as its own, I do think it is enjoyable enough, and it is actually quite fun, and I do think it is way better than that other shitty game that I mentioned earlier. But is it better than any of the Road Rashes on the Sega Genesis? Nah, I don't think so, but I do think it is competently made enough. Also, two other minor things I can say about this game that I have yet to mention is that I did wish there was a bit more playable characters in the game, and also like more like characters like in the race, because there's only like 5 of them. 6 if you count like the generic guy who will like usually try to like beat you up if you get off your motorcycle, but he don't count. And the other thing is that this game is only 1 player, but given like how like the game performs though, I think it might have been for the best if they just stuck with that, but it would have been really cool if this game did have 2 players though. But other than these things, I do think the game is fun enough for what it is, for that it is a good game that you can just play for a few minutes just to pick up and play it like every once in a while. But it's nothing crazy deep, and honestly, I'm actually okay with that. Like, as much as I do like racing games that have like a lot of content and all this like all their crazy stuff, it's kind of nice just to play one that's just like mindlessly kind of fun. So it may not be the best, like Road Rash, but is by no means the worst, like Zoku Legend of Bashin. So it's right in the middle. Pretty decent, but nothing fantastical. And that's all I have to say about Super Mad Champ. So with that said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.